The subject of today's video are giant eagles. Giant eagles are available in High Elf and in Albion armies, and they have the profile of monster. They have 2 attacks, 3 hits, 6 up armor. Unit size is 3, that's pretty standard, costs 70 points. No minimum, maximum of 1 per 1,000, and they have a single special rule saying that they can fly. And that brings its own interesting shenanigans, which we will talk about in the strengths. Strengths of giant eagles. Firstly, and most importantly, they can fly. Now, in Warmaster Vanilla, flying meant the following 3 important things. 1, that a move is 100 centimeters. Therefore, 2, a charge is 100 centimeters. A 100 centimeter charge is enormous in the game. The table is only 1.2 meters wide. So being able to charge 100 centimeters is a big deal. In Warmaster Revolution, the charge has been reduced down to 60 centimeters, which makes it a little bit more manageable, I would say. Another interesting thing about flyers, another strength, is that while in a regular formation, they move at half speed. Half speed for flyers is the same as full speed. So you can be in a regular formation and still move 100 centimeters and potentially still charge 100 centimeters. In Revolution, you can move 100 centimeters but can only charge 60 centimeters. Something to note here is that if you're playing the optional rule where you get a half-pace move, they've been restricted to 10 centimeter half-pace move because having a 100 centimeter half-pace move when you fail an order didn't make any sense because that was the same as a full-pace move. So they also get an extra initiative move. They can't use it as well as the evade or initiative charge, but what they can do is home back, and that allows them to come back from a long way away because they can only be ordered within 20 centimeters, which is a weakness that we'll talk about. So it allows them to come back towards a character, and how that works is you roll, you say I'm going to home back, you roll a d6, that's times by 10, so if you roll a 6, it's 60 centimeters. Then you select which hero you're going to move towards, and you have to move as far as you can towards that hero without changing facing or anything. So they have a lot of mobility, and if you can get 2 orders off, so you say you home back and then you order, well, that first order can reposition them up to 40 centimeters, and then the second order, you can come in. So for example, you want to charge somebody. You do your home back. That potentially is a 60 centimeter move. You then give them an order to reposition, so that can be another 40 centimeters because you've got to be within 20 to have the order. You've got to stay within 20, so that's another 40 potentially, and then you can order them to charge. So you can potentially move 100 from the home back and then the reposition order. If you're playing vanilla, that's another meter. I mean, that's 2 meters of movement from 2 orders. That and a home back. That is a crazy amount of maneuverability. The strength of these fellas is they're short-based. We've talked about their maneuverability, and they hit relatively hard on the charge. So 4 dice per stand, 12 attacks if when you go in as a unit, if you can all contact. Obviously, they're not carrying much armor, so 12 attacks is better on a soft target or a flank. You wouldn't put 12 attacks into the front of knights and expect to win because they won't. And then we will talk about a strength later that they can do some really naughty shenanigans with charging and putting these fellas in the back. We'll talk about it at the end of the episode in a tactics bit. But one of the other things you can do with these, which I didn't like at all, but if you're playing vanilla Warmaster, you can just order these over the back. So you just issue an order. Say it's on an 8 or a 9 or whatever, just a single order, and they move 100 centimeters. They position themselves back facing towards your edge behind some artillery, who then have a single order in their turn, if you're playing regular Warmaster, to turn round, and if they don't turn round, you get to initiative charge them in the arse and probably delete their brigade of artillery for not much effort. In Revolution, with your free half-pace move, you can turn around, and that will at least allow you to shoot them and knock them about a bit, and you'll be facing the right way when they come and charge you. So it really does dissuade that tactic quite a lot, and that's a good thing because that tactic really was a bit shitty, and it was a bit low effort, and if it came off, it was like game-changingly good for not much effort at all. Okay, a few of the weaknesses of giant eagles in particular, some flyers is that they have quite big, juicy flanks. And in Revolution, if you can get into their flank, um, they're only going to attack one pack with one dice, aren't they? Because if they're in line and you get into their flank, that's one guy fighting back on the flank, and you're potentially putting, even Halberdiers would put 12 attacks, wouldn't they? And because you get a second round of combat in Revolution, I mean, that will be enough to destroy the Eagles, you would have thought. You're going to have approximately 24 attacks, hit with 12, they've got 6 of armour, so that's them dead, and you're only taking a couple of attacks back in return. So, in original vanilla Warmaster, it was slightly less troublesome because you could only get one round of combat against a flyer, no matter where you hit them, unless you yourself were attacking with flyers. So you'd only get one round and then they'd be away. What else is a weakness? They don't have a, even if you manage to get them in a relatively protected situation, so they're getting charged in the front, they're only going to attack with 2 dice per stand, so there's only 6 attacks, which isn't a lot. I mean, and they should be fragile because look at them; they're giant eagles. If you catch them, you should be killing them off. So they're not particularly good at taking a charge, and nor should they be. So they've got big exposed flanks, and if you get into the flanks, you'll delete them. They're not particularly good at taking a charge, and then they really have a lot of terrain restrictions. So if you play on a board with a lot of terrain, these guys will struggle because of the places they can't go. So what tier? Well, it can only really be tier A. There are things above these again, but they're few and far between. And even a poor flyer is still a flyer, and there are still exploitative things you can do with flyers that you can do with nothing else in the game. And one such tactic we're going to discuss now. So if you look at this picture, we have a brigade of silver helms, 2 silver helms, facing off against 2 Empire Knights, and to the left we have our giant eagles. And then in the next picture, let's assume for the sake of argument, we're more than 20 centimeters away, so we've not got any enemy near us, any stuff going on, and we're going to issue an order to our silver helms, which, I mean, can be, if we're more than 20 centimeters away, that can be on a 10 if we're using the general, so that's a near cert. So we send our silver helms into the front, and then, and only then, we order our giant eagles to go and stand behind in one of the most dick move pieces of shenaniganry, gamery that Warmaster has to offer. Warmaster in all forms, Warmaster Revolution and Warmaster Vanilla. So within the rule set, there is no limit to how close you can be to something. Obviously, if you're touching something, then you're attacking it. And in order to do that, mainly you'd have to charge. But there's no certain game systems have you can't come within an inch, you can't come within this unless you're charging. Warmaster doesn't have that. So let's say we position ourselves 1 centimeter away, which is the least you can get pushed in a combat. You can put yourself a millimeter away as well, as long as there's a gap. There is some gap between you and the opponent and the enemy. So you're 1 centimeter away, which is how far you're going to get pushed. You're going to push the enemy, even if you win by 1, because everything gets rounded up. So there are 2 units of silver helms. Even if you win the combat by 1, that's 0.5. It gets rounded up to 1. They get pushed back 1 centimeter away. You're stood with your eagles 1 centimeter away, and they're all destroyed, because that's what happens. Because they can't retreat. They can't if they have to retreat into something that can't move, like terrain that can't move and they can't go into. It's not like with a drive back where they get confused, they're just destroyed. And if they move into an enemy model or a combat that they can't move, they'll be destroyed. So on this occasion, all we have to do is win the combat with the silver helms, and they are destroyed. Now, it does leave your eagles hanging in the wind, because when you get your reform move, the eagles weren't in combat, so they don't get to reform. So they will be in whatever formation, however they're arranged. That is what they will look like when the opponent's next turn begins. So you reform your silver helms. You can use them as a screen, because they're probably in a rough position and they're probably going to get caught and killed, being in a line with a massive flank exposed. But we can use them as a screen and get back up to 18 centimeters away, and then if they come through the eagles, the worst case scenario is an advance into our silver helms. If we look at the final picture, this is how you want to go in, because At the moment, when we charge those Empire Knights with our silver helms. We have 12 attacks per unit, so 24 attacks. They have 9 attacks per unit, so 18 attacks. So we're only 6 attacks up, and rubber lancing is a thing. The variance can happen. You're only rolling 6 more dice, and if you don't get that many dice, or the person spikes because it's 4 up armor, 4 up to hit, 4 up armor, plus 6 on the dice isn't that much. So what we can do is add in a combat modifying terrifying creature, in this case, a dragon. I mean, that's top tier, isn't it? You spent 80 points on a hero, or 90 points for a wizard, but it'll be generally hero. 80 points for a hero. You spent 100 points on a dragon, and you spent on this occasion, you probably chuck a sword in. So it's going to cost you about 190 points for this dragon. But this dragon not only gives me 5 extra attacks now, because he's got a sword, 3 attacks on the dragon, 1 for the hero, taking my number of attacks from 24 to 29, which already gives me almost twice as many in the differential. So instead of being plus 6, I'm now plus 11. What it also does, it takes away 4 attacks from the people I'm attacking, from the knights. So all the unit, they're obviously facing the unit of silver helms with the dragon in, the ones on the right, they lose an attack, but also the stand that's touching from the next unit of knights loses a stand. So they go from 18 attacks down to 14 attacks, and we go from 24 attacks to 29 attacks. So now the differential 29 to 14 is plus 15, or more than double. So those odds are looking very, very, very strong. And that's what you kind of want to do. If you're going to do this, you're potentially sacrificing the eagles. You've got to make sure you win this combat, because if you lose this combat, the guy, the Mr. Knight can get repositioned. They'll eat your eagles. They'll probably manage to eat at least 1 unit of silver helms, or very badly damage them up. So if you're going to do this, you have to make sure it works. And the way to make that work is to put a terrifying creature in. And that will change the maths dramatically. Then the only thing you've got to worry about is protecting your character next turn, because he will be locked into that unit. So finally, as we've already said, they're tier A. These guys are very, very, very good indeed. There are other flyers available, and we will talk about them at some point. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Until next time.